Now today we have a very special program, and it's a little different than anything we have done. In the museum, generally we have a local person who writes a history book. And one day I was in the gift shop with some of the volunteers, and in walked a lady that said she'd written a book about Cherokee little people, and we're like, huh? And we started looking at the book, and we decided, this is good.
Thank you.
And matter of fact, we said, we'll get you on our schedule. And I said, I want one of the books right now. So I bought one of the books and took home with me. And I will tell you that I read it in 2 sittings. I literally could not put it down because I was so intrigued by the interviews that she had done with people on this book. So at this time, I'm going to have our own Hilliard Staten. We'll introduce Mary, and most of you probably know Hilliard. He does a lot of good work here in the museum, and is 5th generation Henderson County?
I think so, yeah.
So he came with the dirt.
Wow. Thank you, Carolyn. I hope that you all can hear back there. My ears are perfect, but I have noticed people mumble a lot more than they used to, and if they speak up, I'll understand what they say. So I want to speak up so you can hear me. How many of you know what Monday is, this coming Monday? Any special significance to Monday, the 10th of November?
Veterans Day.
It's the 239th birthday of the United States Marine Corps. Now you might say, what in the world does that have to do with Cherokee little people? Well, it's history. And if you think that the Marine Corps was founded before the United States came into being in 1775, we're a new country. We're newcomers to this country. Long before there were justices and statons and steps and garrons and so forth, there were Cherokee and other tribes in this area. And western North Carolina is a very fruitful archaeological dig. There was a play here, I think last year. One of the lines in there was, any history should begin in strangeness. Well, I think we're going to do some of that today. It is a strange story. It's a strange mythical story in a way, because every country, every section of the world has some story relating back to the little people. Yeah, there are pygmies in Africa, but they have stories of this in Hawaii, in Peru, in Mexico, in Ireland. Now, if you know an Irishman, you don't have to go to Ireland to hear this. If you know an Irishman, you know they're addicted to the drink, and they believe in the little people. Those are 2 things about Ireland. Well, we find out from our latest author that it's older than that, and it's central here in western North Carolina. And I believe we have a very interesting presentation before us today that will tell us more about the beings that were known in this part of the country. And I believe that you might tell us that some of the Cherokee insist that they may still be around in certain parts of western North Carolina. So I would not dispute that, but you came to hear Mary Joyce speak today and not me, so I would just introduce her. She is a journalist by trade and has talked about this particular book, Cherokee Little People, on ABC television in Asheville, on Fox TV in Greenville, South Carolina. She's been a guest on several national radio shows, including Coast to Coast AM, which covers 3 million listeners. And she lives in Dillsboro now and has had a lifetime experience writing, studying what the journalists are supposed to do with their career. And so without further ado, I would like to have Mary Joyce come and tell her story about the Cherokee little people.
Thank you. Do you want this one left on?
No, they're fine.
They're fine? Okay. And can you hear me in the back row? All righty. I want to thank everybody for coming. Is there a curtain there? No? Sorry. You want to sit right here?
No, don't pass.
Okay. Anyhow, thank you for coming out today, and I want to thank the staff here. I think the people at this museum do a wonderful job of making history come alive, and this is part of their programming, and I think Hendersonville is very, very fortunate to have all of you. So thank you very much. I moved to Western North Carolina in 1988. I'd never heard of Little People. And when I first started hearing the stories, I kind of dismissed them as just little fairy tales, you know, old legends. I didn't pay a lot of attention. And then one day, a man came into where I was working, and he was very well respected in Jackson County. He's written 4 books. He was a survivor of the prison camps during World War II. He was a pastor for over 40 years, and generally very well respected, so you don't just dismiss somebody like that. So somehow we got on the subject of Little People, and he said, no, they were real. And he said, when he was working on Western Carolina University campus, when they were doing early construction, they found these little tunnels. And I got different descriptions of the tunnels. They would be anywhere, the smallest was like 18 inches. Typically it was like 2 feet. The biggest ones were like 3.5 feet. And they were all made in red clay, real dense red clay, and they had an arched top. Typically they were like 3.5, maybe 4 feet tall. Any of us would have to crawl to get into them or duck way down low if you were short. So all throughout the building projects on the campus, they would run into these little tunnels. Now, as you may know, if you've lived in Western Carolina for very long, you get your best stories by people connecting you to other people. And so when I met Walter Middleton, he then introduced me to Johnny Clayton, and Johnny Clayton seemed to know every old-timer in Jackson County. And so I got to interview actually a total of 11 people, and I have the transcripts in the book. I originally did the interviews, most of them, back in 2000, 2001. And it was so startling what I was finding, and then I found out nobody had recorded any of this. There was no record of it. So the old journalist in me started to say, okay, we can't let this disappear. So back in 2000, 2001, I put the transcripts together just to save them. Then this past year, I decided to make it into what I call a real book. And I went and got photos, I got location maps, I got more interviews, and put it together in a real book form. Some, you probably have already seen it. On the front is the suggestion of what the little people look like. I haven't ever found a photo of one, but that seemed to match the description that most of the old-timers were telling me, and the Cherokee. On the back, there are 2 pictures of the campus, and I put stars on some of the locations on Western's campus where they found either little tunnels or little skeletons. Now, Johnny Clayton was one of the older ones. He was in his upper 80s when I interviewed him. And he had the earliest report of a Little People tunnel. His father had run a mica mine up at the top of Cullowhee Mountain, which is south of Western's campus. And one day, when he was about 6 or 7, which would have been back in the very early 20s, these 4 men came in that were working for his dad. And they were all excited because they were digging a mica mine, and they crossed an old tunnel that was already there. And again, they are little tunnels. I guess I should really, it's typically they were like this and about like that with a rounded top. The rounded top, if you're an engineer at all, you know that that defers the weight in the middle of the tunnel so it goes down the side. So these ancient tunnels don't collapse very easily. He also knew one of the early stories about the moonshiners. And again, if you've been in this part of the country for very long, you know back in the Prohibition days, there was a lot of moonshining going on. Well, there were these moonshiners up at the top of Cullowhee Mountain, and they were digging a new site. And it was way off the road, you know, where nobody could find it. And they found a pile of Little People bones. They didn't tell anybody during Prohibition, they just covered them back up because they didn't want anybody to know where their stash was. So Johnny Clayton gave me some of the earliest stories. How many people are familiar with Western's campus? A few of you, okay. When they first discovered stuff on that campus, It was at the McKee Building. And the McKee Building was built in the late 1930s. So when Johnny Clayton was part of a work crew, and there was at least 100 people there, they started digging into what they thought was virgin land. And they found 2 little tunnels going east from McKee Building toward the Byrd Building, if you're familiar with the campus. And most of the people there were aware that those tunnels were there. Now, the McKee Building is really strange because from the front it's 2 stories. From the back it's 3 stories. And after World War II in the late 40s, they went in there and they cut out a basement beneath the top 2 stories, which sounds difficult to me, but that's what they did. Walter Middleton was involved with that second stage of construction, and they found 3 little tunnels going in the opposite direction. The stories of McKee are quite extensive. Many of the people that I interviewed had gone to school there when it was either a grade school or a high school. And these boys, these men could remember being little boys hearing about these tunnels in the basement. And so they would sneak in there. Some of them hid their cigarettes in there. But when nobody was looking, they would go down and dare each other to go look at these tunnels. And one of the boys was, I think, 9 years old at the time. And he was scared, but he didn't want to look like he was scared. So he just saw the tunnels and then he split. But a number of the old-timers could remember the tunnels in the basement. Now, here's the irony. Today, the bottom floor of the McKee Building is where the archaeology lab is. And it gets even stranger. This past spring, I went and interviewed the man who was in charge of facilities. He had one of these long titles, but he was in charge of construction and architecture and things like that for the campus. And when I talked to him, he said, yes, there's little tunnels, but you can't get to them anymore. And I'm going, oh, phooey. And what they had done was in 2000, about the time I started to get curious about this, they decided that wall down in the basement needed to be reinforced. So they went in and put a wall, I think he said it was like 18 inches thick, and it's waterproofed. And the irony is there are still at least 2 tunnels that are on the other side of the wall, and nobody can get to them unless somebody convinces somebody to make a door in that wall. Now, another very interesting thing on the campus was that they had 2, they called them Indian mounds. The more I learned, the more I figured out they probably weren't Indian mounds. The old-timers could remember when they were kids that there was this mound, the larger mound, and there was a hole in the top of it that went straight down. And the farmer took logs, and they said they were 6, 8, 10 inches in diameter, and they put those logs down in there to keep the cattle, because it was farmed at that time, to keep the cattle from falling in the hole. Later on, when they started putting in sewer pipes and they started building new buildings, and they kept finding these tunnels, the tunnels came to this Indian mound. And the conclusion of the men I interviewed was that was just a pile of dirt from digging out these tunnels. So, now they found skeletons. One of the stories that I found extremely interesting was they found a little skull. It was a child-sized skull. And one of the science professors just kept it on his desk, almost like a decorative paperweight. And he just said it was, a child's skull from the mound. One day, a teacher came in and looked at it real closely and said, this isn't a child's skull. It has all its wisdom teeth. So if you've been through that, you have to be 18, 19, 20 to start to get wisdom teeth. And the little skull has the wisdom teeth. Now, people want to know what these little people look like. Surprisingly, I got 3 different descriptions. The most common one was that they looked like the Cherokee, with the same coloring, the same eyes, only they were just little. Another description, and then I need to explain something else. The Cherokee didn't come from this area. They moved here from the Great Lakes region. And when they arrived, They found these neatly tended gardens, but they didn't see any people. Eventually, they saw these little people come out from under the ground, and they would tend their gardens and take the food back to their underground towns. They were described as having a very different look, that kind of blue skin and larger eyes. So that's the second description. Third description is, they said they were more like leprechauns, had the red whiskers, turned up nose, and the ears. And in the book, there is a picture of a medallion that a little boy found back in the 1940s, back in 1940, when there was a historic flood of the Tuckasegee River, which runs through that area. And south of the campus, there is a Methodist church. And this little boy was out there, and he found this, what he called a lead head. And it had like a leprechaun's face on both sides. He called it the lead head because it was so heavy. And the man is still living. He still has that. He doesn't want to be identified, so I have the picture of the medallion in the book, but I only refer to him as the boy. So that would support the idea that, there were some that looked a bit like leprechauns. One of the other men told me that ones that looked like Cherokees didn't like the ones with the red whiskers, and they tried to kill them out. Some people speculate that may be why there was a pile of little people bones at the top of Cullowhee Mountain, sorry. Another person had a very interesting theory on where the little people came from. And when I interviewed her back in 2001, I only knew her as Ruth Beck. And then when I started to put this book together and I went looking for photos of these people and different things to really flesh out the book, I found her obituary. And it wasn't until then that I realized or found out that she was the great-great-granddaughter of Solly. Now, Solly is the hero among the Cherokee. He gave up his life and the life of his sons so that the Cherokee who remained here after the Trail of Tears would be allowed to stay in the mountains. And so there was a deal worked out. So he and his sons were all killed except for his youngest son, and he was allowed to live. And so she has a very interesting lineage. And her theory was, and she grew up hearing about little people, so that's just part of Cherokee culture. But she said they might be from outer space. And if you know anything about Cherokee traditions, they believe that they originally came from the Pleiades, which is a constellation of seven, they call it the Seven Sisters. And there are many Cherokee legends where they talk about the Seven Sisters. They're actually talking about the seven stars of the Pleiades. So they have a tradition of believing that they originally came from out there. So it's not a big step to think that maybe these were from out there also. How many people here have heard of Judaculla Rock? Okay, that is south of campus, and it's the largest petroglyph in this state. It's one of the largest in the Southwest. It's also one of the biggest mysteries in that kind of a category. Nobody has been able to figure that out. And I do have pictures of that in the book. The Cherokees haven't been able to figure out what it means. Nobody has. Some people speculate that the little people did because they were here before the Cherokee. When the Cherokee arrived, the little people were already here. Now, Judaculla, that's the English version of this. I don't know how to say it in Cherokee. I tried, can't do it, but it's known as Judaculla Rock and Judaculla Giant. The Judaculla Giant is known for that part of the mountains. And I have a website where I do a lot of different kinds of topics. And one of the topics I got into was I interviewed 5 people who all are very credible looking people with professions, and you should be able to trust them, have all said that they have seen Bigfoot in those parts of the mountains. And one of those stories, which I thought was the best one, is included in this book. it is again speculated that the Judiculla giant may indeed have been one of the Bigfoot, because the Bigfoot and the Cherokee and the Judiculla giant all were in the high mountain caves. And I always throw this out. If giants like the Bigfoot can still remain elusive, think how easy it would be for little people to remain elusive. And it is still believed, I probably should have had a subtitle to the book, but it is still believed by many, many Cherokee who claim that they still see the little people in the very remote areas of the reservation and places around there. This is not in the book, but somebody did tell me they've heard rumors like that there are little people toward Chimney Rock too, but I haven't explored that. Is that correct? Yep. Yeah. Well, that's what some of them call them. That's what the Cherokee originally called them. I'm going to take just a little bit of a break here. Does anybody have any questions about what I've said? Anything at all?
I would like to know where the skeleton
Now we get into a touchy area. The university, I think you basically can say that they didn't want this promoted a lot because they didn't want their construction projects to stop. And when you run into an archaeological site, you know, that slows down construction. So I think that's the predominant reason why they've been real hush-hush about it. Since the book came out, I did talk to somebody who graduated from that program who said that at least one of those little skulls, you know, the child-sized skulls, are in the deep vaults at the university. Also, when I did the interviews, at the time that the mound was mowed down, I don't know, I have to be careful here. Don't want to get in trouble with everybody. But I think they still exist. And the old-timers said that they did have other universities, like a university from Virginia, they didn't know which one it was, came and got some of the artifacts from the mound. There's rumors that the University of Tennessee got some. When I made a trip over there and tried to find out for myself, I got nowhere, so I don't know if that's true or not. Want to throw out another story that I heard from the men when they were young. And this one man, he would walk to the McKee building, which again was a grade school and a high school before it ever became part of the university. And he would always pass by this farmer's field, and the farmer had 2 horses that he used to plow with. And the young man loved horses, so he would stop and visit with them. And one day the farmer told him that it always made him nervous that one of those little tunnels going toward the mound would collapse and his horses would break a leg. So that was another bit of confirmation. I think I've hit the highlights on that. I don't want to spoil everything with the story, with the book, because there's a lot in there. And I'm hoping that people who are into archaeology will actually take some of the information in here and some of the maps, and maybe they can find additional information. Again, since the book came out, I talked to a man who's in construction now, and he was working on a construction project about 4 or 5 miles from the campus. And the way the project worked was there was a hill or a mountain like this, and they had to cut into it so this building could be built. When they did, they found 5 of these little tunnels going back into the hill. And it was interesting to hear him describe it because he said the tunnels were about 2.5 feet wide, and he described them as having the arched top again. And he said when they cut into that, the tunnels looked as fresh as if they'd recently been made. There was no cobwebs, the clay was still moist. Of course, they didn't see anything else. He also noticed that there were groove marks. He said they must have used a tool that had like 3 prongs on it, and they would go like this to smooth out the sides of the tunnels. And that's something that I just found out about since this book came out, and the book came out in June. So there's more information to be found, so keep your eyes and your ears open. Yes?
Are these tunnels interconnected, or where do they go?
When they originally talked about the moon people, they said they took the food down to a city beneath the ground. There's enough tunnels that have been found that I think that they must connect. There must be something down, that where they all get together. But I don't know anybody who's gone deep into them. Many of the tunnels, like one of the men who was involved with pouring the cement for the concession stands at the football field, said that they supposedly were building on virgin land, and they were just leveling it out, and then when they went to pour the cement just kept going down this hole, down this hole, down this hole. And he couldn't remember. He said it took 6 or 8 cement loads to stop the cement from, where it finally leveled out. And yeah, if you know the campus, it's where the stadium is, behind it, and between there and the Episcopal Church that's right behind the stadium. And then Buzzard's Roost is another place on campus that a lot of people certainly would know about if they've been on the campus. It's on the south side of the campus. It overlooks the campus. Many of the faculty, not many, but faculty members do live up there. And behind the student union, again, they cut into a hill like this so they could expand the parking behind the university center. And when they did, they found these tunnels. And these were bigger than the other ones, but the man still had to get down on his knees to get into them. And he crawled back up, I think he said about 100 feet. That one might very well be Cherokee as opposed to Little People because of the size of it. And those tunnel-like caves were on the side facing south, which would be the best place to be in the wintertime. And that particular area is surrounded by mountains, and it is known as the old Cherokee winter camp. And I believe it because I live near there. And those mountains defer all sorts of weather. Many times you in Hendersonville, like this last snow, you got it, we didn't get any at all. And that happens a lot. So I think they deliberately chose that as the winter camp because there's a natural protection from the mountains.
Have they discovered any tools that they used to make these tunnels, or any artifacts like pottery? Or...
The only thing I've heard of is the skeletons. And when they were doing projects like digging the sewer lines or building new buildings or leveling the mound, they found the skeletons and the little skulls. Skeleton and skull comes out skeleton. So
what was the estimated height of the skeletons?
I'm sorry?
What was the estimated height of the skeletons?
What I'm hearing is they're generally like 3.5 feet, 4 max, but mostly 3. Yes?
Will you repeat the questions, please?
She was just asking about the size of the skeletons, and the feedback I've been getting is, I think they uncovered regular Cherokee skeletons too, but they found ones that were only like 3.5 feet tall. Any other questions on that? Yes?
The animals have made these tunnels?
No, because they're absolutely square cut on the bottom and on the sides, and the only thing that's rounded is the top, and engineers know that makes it more substantial so it won't cave in. Did I see a hand over here? Or am I imagining things? Did you? Yes.
Relative to the skeletons and the physical remains, have there been any NAGPRA claims from the tribe?
I don't know. I know that the Cherokees know that that's going on over there. I mean, I've spoken at the Cherokee library, and officials with the tribe were there. So if they didn't know about it before, they know about it now. So, yes.
Have they found these skeletons in other parts of like Tennessee or North Carolina, any other sites?
I specifically focused on the people where I could talk to them firsthand. I don't doubt for a minute that they're in other places too. I've had several people want me to do a follow-up to this book, and it would be more like what you've seen already. There are books that exist where the Cherokees talk about seeing the little people. And I don't know if another book needs to be done about that or not. I'm still collecting information. I do not know if I'm going to do anything with it. I may put it on the website that I do, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. Yes, sir?
Are there any exhibits in the Cherokee Museum related to little people?
No, there isn't. And the Cherokee, you get very mixed signals from the Cherokee. You hear about superstitions. You hear some people say if you talk about the little Cherokees that you'll die. That certainly can't be true because Johnny Clayton had talked about little people since he was 6 or 7, and I can't remember exactly, but I think he was like 87 when he died. So that kind of blows a hole in that theory. I also think to some degree it was used as a parental way of keeping the kids from going too far. You better watch out or the little people might get you and take you away. Could have been a parental crutch. Yes?
As I looked this up on the computer, I copied 2 inches of papers, and it's all about myths. And nothing says anything about the skeletons or anything that you're talking about.
Right, and that's why I did the book. If I was just stumbling on what's already been out there, I wouldn't do it. But nobody had done this, and I thought, oh my God, all these people are in their 80s, and that was, 12 years ago? So I just needed to save it. Yes?
Are there no archaeologists who are going into Western to see these tunnels to record the fact that it's...
I don't know exactly what's going on at that university. I have contacted the chancellor. I've tried to encourage them to come clean with their information. I'm learning an awful lot of it from people who graduated from the program. Some of it, I hate to, in the book, I felt good about writing those things because I felt there was a strong support for it. But some of the things I'm hearing now, and you kind of wonder, and so it won't go in book form, but I will tell you this. I was contacted again since the book from a man who went to Western. And when he was a student, he and other people were out by the river. Who knows what they were doing, probably just horsing around. But somebody who was high up in the university had a box about the size of a shoebox or bigger. And the person even said that they were taking some of the little bones that they found on campus and reburying them out somewhere else. And that was being done on the QT. So nobody wants to stop building. And I'm very torn about it because we can't stop building because there's remnants of civilizations all over the world. And if we can't build, that's a problem. But at the same time, some of this needs to be preserved. If they had, let's say, preserved the tunnels, just the ones going out from the McKee building, they could have put in a window so people could look at it. It could have become the basis for building a very interesting archaeology department. But the mindset at that time was only to get the buildings done, period. So we probably lost a lot of good stuff.
On the computer, they talked about the Cherokee little people being mud dolls. Could you expound on that?
I don't know a thing about that.
They used to make the dolls out of mud, clay, the clay dolls.
Right.
And they said about the Indians that went to Oklahoma still made these clay dolls, and they still make them there. So when you go there, you buy clay dolls.
That are representative of the little people. Yeah, I have heard of those. Yeah. All righty. Now, the books are available up here. Half of the cost of the book goes back to your museum because I think museums need to be supported, and that's a small way that I can help do that, yes.
Could you tell about the other book that you
That's
have?
next on my list. That's next on my list. I have another book up here that I did almost exactly a year ago. The short title is Tangible Evidence of Jesus. The long title is Tangible Evidence of Jesus Left Behind for Us to Find. And it is Let's see if I got it here. It has lots of pictures, lots of maps, lots of graphics in it, and it's written in a very concise form. Having been a journalist for many years, you're trained to get it concise, and most people are too busy to be able to read everything. And what I've done is I've taken information that archaeologists and researchers and scientists have found, and I have put it in a very condensed form, and so it's very readable. And I should venture out to say this. What I'm about to say now, if I were in the audience even a year or two ago, I would say, yeah, all right, but I'm going to say it anyhow. Almost a year ago, I was awakened in the early morning hours, and I was told to do this Jesus book. And it was Jesus himself. You see why I said 2 years ago I would have said, you're, all right, but it did happen. And I was also told to get it done in a month's time. And I did get it done within a month's time, to the day. I could not have done it if I hadn't already done a lot of reading and research, because I was just plain curious. Didn't intend to write a book about it, I just wanted to have the answers. And there's a great deal in the book that will confirm your faith if you're Christian, but if you're too much in a box about your Christianity, it might cause you to have to think beyond that box. Yeah, should I say any more about it? I should? Okay, she's my friend and promoter. I have to stay away from this. The book starts out with copies of letters that are in the Congressional Library, and they are letters that have been translated into English that were written, one by Pontius Pilate and one by another. I have the name of the book, I can't remember what it is right now. And at the time of Jesus, as you know, they had no TV, no radio, no photographs, nothing. And Caesar, back in Rome, was curious about this Jesus character he was hearing about. And so these were letters to Caesar describing Jesus for him. What's interesting is the description of him is very similar to descriptions of Jesus that I found in legends of the American Indians. Not just the American Indians, all through the Western Hemisphere. There are legends, and they describe the similar teachings and similar look to what you find in the letters to Caesar. So, and there's a whole lot more in there. So if you're interested, that's a wonderful book for Christmas time, with Christmas just around the corner. And
We have it here.
and they do have it here, and half of that book price will also go back to the museum. So we're doing our part to try to help you out over here.